You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Koku. And before we get into today's topic, let me give my customary free biz shout out. Once again, free business shout out goes to Stephanie Renee's Salon. Stephanie Renee's Salon is located at 1614 West Main Street in Kalamazoo, Michigan, zip code 49006. They can be reached at 269-459-6535. That's 269-459-6535. They are conveniently located inside Cali Beauty. That's Stephanie Renee's Salon. Next up is the amymarie.maven.com. amymarie.maven.com. Their mission is to provide high-quality products with unparalleled shopping experience. They offer world-class technology, and they empower beauty professionals to give you the best product. That's amymarie.maven.com. Check them out. Next up, new to the list, this is not a business per se, but I don't mind shouting out organizations that are trying to do the work out there. So this is a free business shout out to www.melanatedconscioussociety.com. That's www.melanatedconscioussociety.com. This is a mentor and Black community empowerment organization located in Jacksonville, Florida. You can follow them on Facebook. In fact, I hope to have the brother, one of the founders, on the show in an upcoming broadcast. So support them. Darius Webb, a faithful listener and someone who is a regular on the timeline for the Bitter Medicine Podcast Facebook page. He put me on to them, and I appreciate that. If you know someone who not only owns a Black business but is running a Black empowerment, Pan-Africanist type organization in the community, send those details to me, and I'll give them a free shout out during the free business shout out segment of the show. One other free business shout out. This goes to Miss Glenay Davis. I had this information for a few weeks now, and I kept forgetting. I kept forgetting to include it. So today, Miss Glenay Davis, this is for you. Your free business shout out. I'm going to read exactly what Glenay said to me. She said, "Hello. Thanks for your reply. I'm Glenay Davis, an LA-based registered nurse, author of a critically acclaimed memoir, Yet Here I Stand, creator and chief nurse of Nay's Vision, a healthcare media empire where we provide the healthcare education and planning to bridge the gaps of knowledge between discriminated, disadvantaged people facing employment, discrimination, and the healthcare industry, resulting in having a strategic plan with the medical support they need to no longer be victimized, merchandised, or marginalized by the system. I currently have 2 products available for your listeners. Number 1, the memoir, and number 2, a free health checklist. Now, you could find Glenay Davis on Twitter, and you should be able to connect with her about your free health checklist. So that's today's free business shout outs again. If you or someone you know owns, runs black business that needs our black dollars, needs our black support, make sure to have them, or you can do it too, send me the information and I will give them a free business shout out on the show. Oh, one more business shout out of sorts. This one comes from Onitase from the Pro-Black Perspective, author of the Pro-Black Compendium and Zubiri and the Maroons of Ma'ah. Take a listen to this.
Black people face one problem: the problem of ignorance. This is why those who opposed us stole us from our parents, disconnected us from our continent, and enforced on us illiteracy. But now the ignorance is self-inflicted. We send our children to their machines. We detach ourselves from our motherland, and we don't read meaningful literature. Consciousness is a series of stages. The sooner we get to one, the sooner we are ready for the higher. The Pro-Black Compendium accelerates the beginner to the advanced and provides for the advanced an unparalleled breadth. This is the sort of book your enemies do not want you to read, but our ancestors would insist you read twice.
And there you have it. That's Onitase, host of the Pro-Black Perspective podcast on KWAZ Radio, and author of the Pro-Black Compendium, which he was just speaking of in that commercial. Let's take a quick station ID, and on the other side, I will start to speak on today's topic.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
Greetings, family. This is Koku, host of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. In case you didn't know, we have an online book club called the Bitter Medicine Book Club. Every month, we will select a book to inspire the Bitter Medicine Podcast listening audience to read along together. At the end of the month, we will have a call-in show and book discussion. This is a great, dynamic way for readers to not only enjoy a book, but also have others to bounce ideas off of. They say if you want to keep anything away from black people, put it in a book. Don't allow this to be true. Head over to bittermedicineblogs.com and subscribe to our newsletter for important updates. Do that today. Join our reading collective today and empower yourselves, your family, and your community. Peace and blessings.
Peace Seeker. Malcolm X, John Henry Clark, Joseph Ben Yakinen, Edward Porkchop Davis, and others took notes from Carlos A. Cooks and might not have obtained their nationalistic fervor nor worldview had they not heard Cooks. This is Oni from the Pro-Black Perspective, author of the Pro-Black Compendium and Zubiri and the Maroons of Ma'ah. I scanned 2 out-of-print books valuing $800 new on Carlos A. Cooks, the foremost black nationalist after Garvey, and added Cooks magazines into one ebook that I can send you for your reciprocity. Send some love to cash.me/$ABSONI with the subject Carlos and your email address, and if your love is strong for your people, you'll get a book. If your love is too weak, you'll get a refund, and you should double your love next time. Carlos is the missing link, who was probably the greatest mind in the world from 1940 to 1966, standing over King and Malcolm like a giant over midgets. These are the missing pages of black history from the 1940s to the 1960s. I just need you to believe in your way of reciprocity, and as you give, you will receive. Cash.me/$ABS only. Show me you value your story.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Welcome back. Once again, it's your host, Koku. And today's show, I'm going to be talking about my take on toxic masculinity, the myth of toxic masculinity. Let me start off by saying this, and I say this without apologies. Men do not need to be fixed, and they do not need to be recreated in woman's image. Let me repeat that again. Men do not need to be fixed, and they do not need to be recreated or reimagined in women's image. Now, before I go any further, let me say this. As you know, this is a Black Empowerment podcast, and I try to stick to solutions for empowering black people. But of course, you can't talk about black people without at times talking about white folks. White people in general, as you've heard me say several times on this broadcast in the past, white people are savages, and everything they do is savage. So if you see a white man and he's displaying certain behaviors, it's because he's a fucking savage to begin with. Okay? So putting the white boy to the side, now let's talk about black men and this notion that there's this toxic masculinity coming from black men. Like I said before, and I believe this, black men, do not need fixing. They don't need to be redesigned or recreated or reimagined in black women's or women's images in general. The fact of the matter is, men and women are different. Equal, but different. Equality doesn't mean the same. You could go back, as you guys might remember, I'm a biologist. You can go back and look at the biology of it. Biologically, men are different from women. Okay? Just going down to the DNA, the basic, the basic building blocks of life. We have different types of chromosomes. You see what I'm saying? We're just different. Yes, there's equality. There ought to be equality between men and women, but there's differences in our equality. Men tend to be stronger than women. It's just a fact. Men, of their own volition, generally tend to be stronger than women. Now, if you're a woman and you're out here trying to make the federation, and the bodybuilding federation, yeah, you're going to be stronger than a good percentage of men. But we're talking about natural hair. Naturally speaking, men are generally stronger than women. And I could hear all the feminists, the feminazis, the cooks, the white knight Negroes with the capes on, and probably a fez on too. I could hear all you guys sucking your teeth and rolling your eyes right now. And that's all right. You'll be okay. But men and women are biologically different. Like I said, men tend to be stronger than women. Men tend to be more aggressive than women. Now, there's reasons why men tend to be more aggressive. A part of it is innate, because the motivation of life, this is what I mean by innate specifically. The motivation of life, you might not know this. Most times, most people who really truly know this are people who are biologists, but you might not know this, but the driving force of life is to have sexual, reproductive success. And I'm not just talking about humans. If you have a flower, if you have a plant growing in like a handful of soil, only a handful of soil is only going to have but so much nutrients. Okay? It's only going to be able to sustain a plant for so long. You know what that plant does sooner than it usually would do had it been in a field of soil? It blooms a flower. It has a shoot, and that shoot blooms a flower. Why does it do that? To give itself a chance to live on in the next generation. Life is funny like that, right? Life wants to continue. So part of a man's sexual aggression is so that he can have reproductive success. And a part of having that reproductive success is you're up against other men who are trying to carry out the same thing. So naturally, men are more aggressive. Socially, men are socialized from boys. Boys are socialized differently from girls. It has to do with the division of labor. Men are raised, and this is going to be a driving part or point of this discussion. Men are raised with the idea that they have a certain set of responsibilities to carry out. And women have another set of responsibilities to carry out. Both of them equally important, but different. And lastly, men have different emotional responses to things. Men have different emotional responses to things in general. That's just how we are. For the most part, you're not going to get a little boy interested in ribbons or how pretty a button is. Like, what? It's just not our thing. Generally speaking, there are exceptions to the rules. But generally speaking, as a male community versus a female community, this is what goes down. When I talk about the division of labor, I want to clarify what I mean there. Because division of labor is a result of how you are raised, or vice versa, right? As a boy, traditionally, you're raised, which could also be said as trained, to take care of family, to provide and protect. To be able to take care of family and provide and protect requires aggression. You need it. Now, the thing about that aggression is it needs to be channeled into into kind of a more honorable form, not a savage shit like what these white boys do when they talk about aggression, but it needs to be channeled into like duty, courage, honor. Duty, courage, honor. Does that sound, do those three things sound like something you need to control? Does it sound like something you need to re-image or recreate in someone else's image? In the other gender's image? No. That's what it is to be a man. Duty, courage, and honor. We were raised that way. We were raised that way. These things are not a problem. When aggression is channeled into those three areas, it's not a problem. When it's channeled into protecting, providing, and caring for a family, that's not a problem. I don't know why anyone would think it is a problem. I don't know why anyone would think that's toxic. Here's where the toxicity comes in, though. Those things that I just talked about, that aggression and how it needs to be channeled, it also needs to be understood by a person who's qualified to understand it. I'm a man, obviously. I'm not qualified to understand the pains of childbirth. Therefore, I don't speak on it. Therefore, I don't tell women how to deal with it. It's not my place, not my lane. Instead, when it comes to this channeling of male aggression, which is natural to a male, you need people who are qualified to teach males how to channel that aggression. You feel me? So you need men who understand what it is to be a man to teach boys who are on the verge of manhood or who are going through the rites of passage towards manhood. You need to you need to have those type of human beings teach those young men what it is to be a man. Because you know what happens when an unqualified person does teach you something? Is usually taught piss poor. And it's usually a characterization or caricature of a thing. I think I've used this analogy on this show before. As you know, I'm from the Caribbean, and I remember there was a time when, and it happened here in the States too, I'm pretty sure, there was a time when kids were accidentally, of course, burning down the house. And the reason why a lot of that was happening was because as a child, and I want you to go back to when you were a child and think about what I'm saying. As a child who doesn't have full understanding of life's concepts, you see adults doing certain things, and you see adults doing it effortlessly, and so you think, oh, that's easy, I could do that too. But you're a child. You don't understand the nuances of things. And I want you to remember that word nuance. Okay? So when you, as a child, see your parents or guardians or, the adults stand at the stove, they pour some oil in a pan, they crack the egg, they flip it twice or 3 times or whatever, maybe to throw, sprinkle a little salt on it, you know. You think to yourself, that's easy. I could do that. Meanwhile, you have no concept of how high the fire needs to be, how much salt is really necessary, how much oil to put in the pan really, how to flip the shit over. And so what do you go and do? You turn the fire on under the pan. You spill the oil while pouring it into the pan. A flame starts. You're a child. Your, limited experience with fire is you use water to out it. So you go throw water on that flame and you burn the house down. That's what happens when you see something, but you don't understand it fully. You don't understand all the nuance that goes into this thing. And you try doing it yourself and you just completely fuck it up. You know who does that too? Our women do that also. Our women see manhood or see manliness. And they have a concept, they have this idea of what it is to be a man. And for whatever reason, you guys have allowed yourselves to be told that you don't need a man in your life. You could be the man and the woman. You could be the mother and the father. Right? And so when you teach these children, be it in a school setting, be it at home, whatever, when you teach these young boys how to be a man, what you really teach them is a piss poor interpretation because you don't yourself understand the nuances of being a man. You ever sit down and observe a boy child crying and his mother scream at him, "Man up! Stop crying! Be a man!" And while they're doing this, while these mothers are doing this, they do the stereotypical thing. They puff up their chests and square out their shoulders and talk, with a kind of a deep voice. But meanwhile, their femininity is still flowing through, and it's real, I hate to use the word, but I'm going to use it, real kind of bitchy, attitudinal type stuff. That's not being a man. That's not being a man. That's not how it's done. You just burned the fucking house down when you taught that little boy that bullshit. So a lot of what's considered toxic masculinity, where the black community is concerned, if I'm to be quite honest, it's really toxic feminine interpretation of manhood is what's really being displayed. I remember a time ago, I don't fuck with a club and stuff like that. I actually went in a club the other day and it was a bad experience. I'm just not built for that anymore. But I remember years back, in the 90s, you go in a club and you step on a fella's, just slightly, step on a dude's shoes or shoe. That could earn you a bullet. That could earn you a bullet. Now let's keep it all the way real here for a second. Which man, and I mean man in the strictest sense of the word, which man is so caught up in his shoes that he's willing to get bitchy and attitudinal and take another man's life? Is that really a man? Or is that a man who's been taught manhood from a woman? Again, I could hear the eyes rolling, the teeth sucking, and all that bullshit, and that's fine. But I want you to hear what I'm saying. I want you to hear what I'm saying. And in the comment section, I want you guys go to town. I want you guys to talk about, have a discussion with me. If you disagree, put it down there in the comments. Send me an email. At me on Twitter. Post on the timeline on the Facebook page. Whatever. However you want to get at me, you get at me. But I tell you no lies here. I tell you no lies. When you see when you see some of our young boys out here always arguing, always moving in these groups and always on edge and attitudinal and moody and ready to argue, clapping their hands together on some bullshit. That's stuff they learn from women. And it's from our women and our women's bad interpretation of what it is to be a man. See, those young boys have aggression, which is natural, as I said. But they haven't been able to channel that aggression into duty, courage, and honor, to apply it to caring for the family, providing for the family, protecting a family. In fact, a lot of what they do is on some selfish shit. As attitudinal and bitchy on some shit that just concerns them. Like I said before, men have an innate drive for aggression. Men have a need to test themselves and to test the limits. That's not toxic. That's their rite of passage. That aggression gives men drive. Drive is what leads to people being builders and protectors. Now, drive can also be destructive, but at the same time, some destruction is good. Because oftentimes to build, you first have to destroy. And in either case, you're going to need that aggression, that drive to do both. When you're driving in some of these states in America and your car drives through a part of a mountain, a man had to look at that mountain and say, you know what, we're going to cut through this shit. We're going to blow up a tunnel through this, then we're going to carve the tunnel nicely so cars can drive through. We're going to pave the road and make it nice. That's drive. That comes from that aggression. We ain't got time to try to go around and all this bullshit. We're going through it. The thing about drive, too, you can kill drive. You can destroy it. And so that's what's going on now with this constant war on masculinity, this constant talk about toxic masculinity. And you see what they're doing to children, especially male children in school. I have sons myself. I'm speaking from what I know. Most of these schools, the teachers are women. You'll get a male teacher in PE and stuff like that, but for the most part, the teachers, the homeroom teachers, are women. And depending on the school and school system that they're in, it's not uncommon. In fact, I want to say it's likely for these black kids to be in these schools and the teacher is a white woman who already has her prejudices and biases against your children because of your skin color, right? She already has the fears that her grandfather and great-grandfather passed down, that black men are up to no good and want to rape them and all this old shit like that. They already look at our kids, they already look at them as adults. Okay? And so these folks are in these schools now, and they're trying to kill the drive that's in your son. They're trying to kill the warrior spirit potential in your son. There's a reason there's a school to prison pipeline, because that's how they get all the warrior class dudes up out of here. Behind a wall, behind a chain link fence. Guns pointed down at them. Modern day slaves. That's to kill that drive. That's to kill that drive. People see men as a universal problem where they see, and I'm talking generally now, this movement by women in general, and some of you lame dudes out here, people see men as a universal problem. That men make war, men commit crimes, they rape, and they infuse, aggression into everything that they do. The problem with that is you're lumping all men together. As I started at the top, I tell you, white men are their own shit to the side. They're fucking savages, the men and the women, savages. Okay? And the women know that the men are savages too, because you go back in history around the civil rights movement and leading up to the civil rights movement, white women were lying on black men all the time and had whole towns exterminated off of a lie and white men's aggression. You see, because the white men, because they're savages, they don't have that honor. You see what I'm saying? It's just savagery at that point. It's not channeled. I should say their savagery is channeled into race and organizing against us, black people. But that's what that is. When we talk about black society, our men really aren't making war. You know? Yes, crimes occur. Crimes occur with all peoples, and I wish crimes will occur less with our people because we can't afford to have all these crimes. We can't afford to be raping our women and breaking them emotionally going forward. We can't afford to have our warrior class in prisons and executed and all this. We can't afford it. We need everyone. But that's a human condition. When you talk about crimes, when you talk about wrongdoing, that's a part of the human condition. And for us, a lot of the wrongdoing is steered. We're steered into making those decisions. If you're a person listening to this and you've never seen a jail before, you've never been in one, you've never spent time, you've never been caught up in any serious wrongdoing, that speaks to who you are. And perhaps the environment that you came out of. Because the truth of the matter is, the system is set up. You're being organized against in such a way where it's easy to make that decision to be criminal. That's white organization against you. Okay? So anyway, what do they want to do to combat this so-called toxic masculinity? What do they want to do to combat this so-called toxic masculinity? I tell you what, let's take a quick, the usual station break, I should say. And on the other side, I'm going to talk about how they intend to deal with this said toxic masculinity. All right?
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the pro-black perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions. Peace Seeker. Malcolm X, John Henry Clark, Joseph Ben Yakinen, Edward Porkchop Davis, and others took notes from Carlos A. Cooks and might not have obtained their nationalistic fervor nor worldview had they not heard Cooks. This is Oni from the Pro-Black Perspective, author of the Pro-Black Compendium and Zubiri and the Maroons of Ma'ah. I scanned 2 out-of-print books valuing $800 new on Carlos A. Cooks, the foremost black nationalist after Garvey, and added Cooks magazines into one ebook that I can send you for your reciprocity. Send some love to cash.me/$ABSONI with the subject Carlos and your email address, and if your love is strong for your people, you'll get a book. If your love is too weak, you'll get a refund, and you should double your love next time. Carlos is the missing link, who was probably the greatest mind in the world from 1940 to 1966, standing over King and Malcolm like a giant over midgets. These are the missing pages of black history from the 1940s to the 1960s. I just need you to believe in your way of reciprocity, and as you give, you will receive. Cash.me/$ABSONI. Show me you value your story.
Greetings, family. This is Koku, host of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. In case you didn't know, we have an online book club called the Bitter Medicine Book Club. Every month, we will select a book to inspire the Bitter Medicine Podcast listening audience to read along together. At the end of the month, we will have a call-in show and book discussion. This is a great, dynamic way for readers to not only enjoy a book, but also have others to bounce ideas off of. They say if you want to keep anything away from black people, put it in a book. Don't allow this to be true. Head over to bittermedicineblogs.com and subscribe to our newsletter for important updates. Do that today. Join our reading collective today and empower yourselves, your family, and your community. Peace and blessings.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Koku. And today we're talking about the myth of toxic masculinity in the black community. I spent time in the previous segment talking about the fact that men do have aggression. It's natural to them, but it's supposed to be channeled. And if a man is a man, it has been channeled. His aggression has been channeled into protecting, caring, and providing for his family. His aggression has been channeled into duty, courage, and honor. Duty, courage, and honor. Now, what a lot of folks are out here trying to do is they're trying to basically man-shame individuals who are male. You know, people, white women especially, want to redefine what a man is and does. And frankly, sisters, you follow that bullshit. You follow that bullshit. How many of you like to tell men what it is to be a man? Yeah, I'm talking to you. How many of you like to tell or like to comment on how a man isn't being a man and what it is to be a man, as if you, however, inhabited the body and the societal position of a man? But you would be the first person to get upset if a man says something like, oh man, I had a pain last night like I was giving birth or something like. You would be livid. So how about you stop telling men how to be men and leave that for real men to teach other men how to be men? So there's a man shaming going on, and it's really, the real term is emasculation, to be frank. Emasculation has become the solution to masculinity. The idea is that women, and this is how it's sold as, you know, women can do anything they want to do, but it's these men, these evil men and their masculine selves are barriers to your progress. And so we need to avoid masculinity. So kill that drive, that masculine energy in your sons. And they have all kinds of little mechanisms to help you do it. Ladies and gentlemen who are listening to this right now, I want you to think about or go on your Facebook page right now. Anytime there's some type of transgendered, LGBTQRSTUV, WXYZ bullshit going on, there's black women at the forefront boosting that bullshit up. I'm telling you, if you haven't noticed it before, take note from today. I just saw some bullshit today saying that in the next Miss Universe pageant, there's going to be the first transgendered fucker representing Mexico. And of course, women will applaud the shit. Not realizing that you're fucking, it's so frustrating. It's just so frustrating. They're using all kind of tactics to minimize masculinity in the black community. Like I said, the school to prison pipeline is a way to recognize that warrior spirit and send that ass to a prison. Lock that shit down. Okay? Don't let that fucker don't let that warrior spirit get knowledge and knowledge of self. No, they're afraid of that. So they send that to get locked away. They're carrying out this emasculation program in the media and what you see. There's black men walking around here in jeggings with your ass showing. And folks want to tell me that's the same as wearing baggy pants. Bullshit. I wore baggy pants in the 90s. My ass wasn't showing. I wasn't wearing no tight. No, I didn't know nobody in the 90s wearing no tight ass jeans showing hips. The fuck is that? Dudes wearing pink shoes and all kind of fuckery. Like, come on, man. They're even doing it to you biologically. I started this broadcast talking about the biological difference between men and women. They're even doing this shit biologically. Let me find this clip of a black scientist. Hold on. Let me find this clip of a black scientist named Tyrone Haynes. Now, this is a peer-reviewed scientist. Peer-reviewed scientist means that before his paper could have been published, the paper that summarizes the experiments that he carried out, before that could be published, other scientists had to look over it, and oftentimes, and trust me on this, I used to work in a research lab for many years. Oftentimes, before someone signs off on the review, they run the experiments themselves to see if they can reproduce the findings. Okay? That's what it means to be peer-reviewed. And furthermore, to be published in the better publications in your area of research. Let's say you're doing nutrition. There's a nutrition publication. To get published in the better publications in your field, your shit is reviewed strenuously. The little rinky-dink publications and stuff like that that people don't know about, you could take that shit with a grain of salt oftentimes. Because a lot of those smaller outlets that put out publications, they just want some content, really. You see what I'm saying? But those better, like, if you've ever heard of the publication called Nature, let me tell you something. You have to be doing serious work to be in Nature. And they reviewed and screened that shit strenuously. Okay? Anyway, Tyrone Haynes, a black guy, he was targeted by the herbicide firm called Syngenta. And here, the reason why he was targeted, in fact, you know what? Let me play this clip. I'll play a few minutes of this clip. And I'll let you hear why he was targeted. And I want you to take what you hear and apply it to what I've been talking about so far. Take a listen.
Tyrone Haynes was first hired in 1997 by a company that later became agribusiness giant Syngenta. They asked him to study their product, atrazine, a pesticide that is applied to more than half the corn crops in the United States and widely used on golf courses and Christmas tree farms. But after Hayes found results that the manufacturer did not expect, that atrazine causes sexual abnormalities in frogs and could cause the same problems for humans, Syngenta refused to allow him to publish his work. This was the start of an epic feud between the scientist and the corporation.
Can you tell us what happened to you, how you were originally tied to Syngenta, the research you did, and what prevented you from originally publishing it?
Well, here at Berkeley, I was a new assistant professor. I was already studying the effects of hormones and the effects of chemicals that interfere with hormones on amphibian development. And I was approached by the manufacturer and asked to study the effects of atrazine, the herbicide, on frogs. And after I discovered that it interfered with male development and caused males to turn into females to develop eggs, the company tried to prevent me from publishing and from discussing that work with other scientists outside of their panel.
What was the process within the company as you raised your findings? What was their immediate reaction to what you had come across?
Well, initially they seemed sort of supportive. We designed more studies, we designed more analysis, and they encouraged me to do more analysis. But as the further analysis just supported the original finding, they became less interested in moving forward very quickly. And eventually they moved to asking me to manipulate data or to misrepresent data. And ultimately they told me I could not publish or could not talk about the data outside of their closed panel.
And Professor Hayes, talk about exactly what you found. What were the abnormalities you found in frogs, the gender-bending nature of this drug, atrazine?
Well, initially we found that the larynx or the voice box in exposed males didn't grow properly. And this was an indication that the male hormone testosterone was not being produced at appropriate levels. And eventually we found that not only were these males demasculinized or chemically castrated, but they also were starting to develop ovaries or starting to develop eggs. And eventually we discovered that these males didn't breed properly, that some of the males actually completely turned into females. So we had genetic males that were laying eggs and reproducing as females. And now we're starting to show that some of these males actually show, I guess, what we call homosexual behavior. They actually prefer to mate with other males. And
so where did you go with your research?
Well, eventually what happened was the EPA insisted that the Environmental Protection Agency insisted that the manufacturer release me from the confidentiality contract. And we published our findings in pretty high-ranking journals such as Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. We published some work in Nature. We published work in Environmental Health Perspectives, which is a journal sponsored by the National Institutes of Health.
And there you have it. Tyrone Hayes. Tyrone Hayes is a married man, but no disrespect to the brother, but it sounds like he sprayed some of that herbicide around his neck and shit, because if you look at him, kind of moist. But anyway, you heard where that herbicide is used on most of the corn and stuff, and there's other works you see from Tyrone Hayes. They were looking at the runoff, where that herbicide runs off into streams and lakes and shit like that. And they were finding those fucked up frogs in those areas, away from the crops. So and I know there's more eye rolling and all that old bullshit, but that's science for you. That's a black man doing the science too. And he, as you heard there, he has been targeted by this major company. So it's happening there. Several months ago, I think he's Dr. Wesley Muhammad. He was on the Breakfast Club. And he was talking about how the marijuana that a lot of black youth men smoke is not, he said the chemical composition of what we smoke today is very different from the natural plant that was planted. He said this enhanced marijuana feminizes the black man and masculinizes the black woman because the THC does so many things. The high-potency THC from the plant itself, from the weed itself, it lowers the testosterone in men. Now, I don't know where Muhammad got his information from, but I'm just putting it out there. I think he wrote a book on it and everything, but keep these things in mind. Don't always just think it's nonsense. See, that's what white folks have y'all thinking, that everything is a conspiracy theory. That it's some made-up tale. Nah. You listen to everything. You question everything. So clearly, emasculation is the idea of a solution. So boys are attacked because black boys, want to be men. The problem isn't manliness. The problem is that boys aren't trained to be good men. And if they're not trained to be good men, they're going to be bad men. If they're no good males to follow, they're going to follow bad males. Oftentimes you hear about, well, if women ruled the world or led the world or what have you, you will develop better men. If women led the world, you would have better men. Well, here's a news flash for people who say dumb shit like that. The black community is mostly women-led. And that's not fault of women per se. I'm not trying to shit on black women. I'm just calling it as it is. The black community is mostly women-led because you have these whatless fellas out here who, aside from being targeted by whitey organizing against you and trying to take you up out of, the home and the streets and stuff and put you in these institutions called prisons. You have black men doing dumb shit out here, not living by a code of honor, not using their aggression to protect the family, provide and care for. So that's on men. And I have a show for you guys in the future too. Don't sit back nodding your head, yeah, cool, right. No. Your show's coming too. Don't worry. But for all the reasons that it is the case, the black community is mostly women-led. And you see how bitchy a lot of these men are. Let's just keep it real and call it what it is. You see how bitchy, like these young dudes, you see how bitchy these young dudes are. So like I said before, what you really see from black quote-unquote men is more so the effect of toxic femininity and its interpretation of manliness, in my humble opinion. Black boys understand masculinity. They understand that a masculine defense is required of them. But most of them don't know the difference between defense and aggression. And really it's because our women, naturally, aren't well versed in this area. So men, while y'all out here bullshitting and leaving it all on these women to do, either because you're womanizing, gallivanting, institutionalized, or dead for doing some dumb shit out here, for using your aggression in the worst possible way, forgetting avoidable diseases and dying and all this old shit. Why y'all out here bullshitting and leaving this burden on our women? You are creating a situation where these men aren't going to get the real deal of what manliness is. They're going to get a caricature of manliness, an overly stereotyped version of manliness that still exhibits feminine qualities. So men, or if you know men who are doing this, you're fucking up. You're fucking up. Carlos Cooks, if you're paying attention, only from the pro-black perspective, he sells the Carlos Cooks reader. And Carlos Cooks in that reader talks about caste people. And by caste people, he's talking about people who essentially wish to be white. You know, black folks who wish to be white. Black folks who, you know, on that we sick boss bullshit. You know what I'm talking about? Those type of, the Negroes. I usually call them Negroes on this show. So the Negro male, or the caste man, as Cooks would call him, is usually passive, quiet, and obedient around white folks. But get him around black people, loud, boisterous, vulgar, and ready to challenge the world. In fact, he's ready to hurt black people. And so, guys, when you leave the responsibility all on our women, you essentially create these caste Negroes who are docile when it comes to these white savages, and they're organizing against us as a community, as a whole. Passive. White boy could walk through their area clean, in a white suit, and come out clean. Soon as you see another black man, you want to hurt him. You get all loud and talkative, vulgar, you know, ready to challenge anyone. That's a caste man. That's what I call a no good Negro. Those men, because they cannot offer black women protection and dignity that she rightly deserves, they end up getting no respect. And the bad thing is, as humans, we have the tendency to lump all men into all of a thing into a larger category. Oh, black man, he ain't shit. Black women, bitches and hoes. And then these jackasses go on and have kids, and they're uncles to kids, or what have you, or they're role models to kids in the community or whatever, and they carry on this bullshit going forward. They pass that down. Cooks also talks about the caste woman. And I want you black women listening to this. As a matter of fact, if you're a black woman and you listen to my podcast, I want you to leave a comment or at me on Twitter or send me an email at bitter.medicine.podcast@gmail.com. Let me know that women actually listen to this show. Because that's another problem we have in the black community. a lot of our women don't really want to listen to good instruction. And I'm not talking from some subservient bullshit. I'm just talking about a man's perspective, a man's instruction on how things go. A lot of women are they push back against when men try to tell them how things go. Women, if you listen, have you ever had a situation where your guy he sees you with some coworker, some man from work or something, some coworker, and he says, that guy you have around there, Peter from work, Jamal from work, I think he want to push up on you, and I think you should nip that in the bud, or else I'm going to have to step in, and it's going to be bad if I step in. No, he's just my friend. Why you just carry on like that? I'm telling you what I see. Either you tell him something and let that be or I gonna have to step in and be aggressive. Right? How many times have you women gone through that in your life and come to find out your man, was absolutely correct? That Jamal was only playing sheepish, but he really was trying to get at you in the bedroom. In the comment section below on YouTube, I want you guys to speak on that. You ladies, to speak on it. But as I was saying, Cooks talks about the caste woman also. And he says some interesting things about caste women. He essentially says that society corrupts our women and turns them against us. And I've seen black men say this type of thing on Twitter. And I've seen some of you Cooks, Simps, and White Knights on Twitter talking about, you men just hate women. Here's Carlos Cooks telling you. Society, and he's talking about white society, in fact corrupts our women and turns them against us. So does Carlos Cooks hate women? Oh, I thought not. So let's get your shit together now. Cooks talks about the paradigm that these crackers create, where they're the king, the white woman, pathetic as she is, she's the queen, and right underneath her, there's a black woman, oftentimes as a maid to his woman, and a mistress to him. And that black woman, as a maid to his woman, a mistress to him, he places above the black man. Black women, if you're listening, I know you've heard this said to you enough times that, white supremacy uses you by putting you above your men. And I see it all the time. A lot of you push back against that notion too. But this is Carlos Cooks telling you this thing from easy about 80 years ago. Well, 60, maybe 60, 70 years ago. Cook says something I absolutely love too. He says, he was talking about man and what a man is. And he said that a man is selfish, jealous, and bigoted. He says that a man is possessive. He says that a man murders for his values. That's that channeling your aggression thing I talked about earlier. When you're in control and you have your aggression channeled in the right sectors of life, you will murder to protect it. Last thing Cook says about what a man is, he said a man is someone who doesn't share his woman ever. Doesn't share his woman ever. And these were kind of instructions to you black women. Because the caste woman, the caste black woman, or as I would call the negress, does the work of white supremacy. I talked about how men do dumb shit and get themselves imprisoned and killed and this, that, and the other, but that's not all the reasons why a lot of black men aren't around. Ladies, a lot of black men aren't around because of you. Society has corrupted you and has turned you against us. And as a human being, you take someone like myself who's on positivity and trying to build and provide and protect, etc. I don't really want. I have enough fights during my day in the public sphere. I don't want to come into the private sphere, which is my home, which is really your dominion. And I have to deal with attitude from you. I have to deal with, unnecessary stuff. So a lot of times, ladies, and you're going to have to own up to some of this stuff too. Just like I'm telling you, men do some dumb shit. Black men do real dumb shit out here, and that needs to stop. As much as I talk about black people need to start pushing for exceptionalism, you have to take that too. You got to change that. Because right now you're acting like as Cooks would call it, a caste woman. You're allowing it to happen, and it's fucking with the quality of males that you're giving birth to and rearing. And then you would want to come and say, well, these men are exhibiting toxic masculinity. You heard some white woman say it, now you're saying that shit. Sisters, what you have to understand is whenever a people is conquered, much like we have been, to continue oppressing a conquered people, you have to emasculate the male population of that people. At the end of the day, no matter how organized women, black women, believe themselves to be, you won't conquer white supremacy. Now, let me say something. Were there women warriors in history who turned back oppressors for a time? Absolutely. We've had black warrior queens. Those are what you call winning the battles, but you're still not going to win the war. You could win a skirmish over there with some organized women. I agree. And I applaud it. But this war that we have, you're going to need your men to bring that aggression. If you want to conquer this thing people call white supremacy, this oppression on us, you're going to need everyone's going to be important. But you need your men in front of this battle. So you need to stop with this toxic masculinity. You need to stop aiding in this campaign to emasculate your men. This is war. Like I said, everyone is needed. I'm not trying to shit on women. You're needed. You're valued. Black women, you are supposed to provide the elevation. You're supposed to elevate your men. That will allow your men to determine how far they need to go, which might need to be all out in light of this oppression. As you've heard me say before on this show, white supremacy works daily at our oppression. It's waging attacks on us, both black men and black women, but particularly on the men daily. Through the miseducation, the criminalization, the feminization, the homosexualization. And let's touch on that homosexualization thing for a second before I get to something I really want to discuss real quickly here. The homosexualization of black men is a part of the emasculation of black masculinity, right? And the homosexualization, what that does is it basically renders a black male image of weakness, of femininity, of, you get the idea. But overall, it pushes an image of the weakness of black men, which, again, black women feed into that, right? Part of how all of this is accomplished is, like I mentioned a few seconds ago, when I said black women don't like to get instructions from black men, but now I'm going to open it up and step back a little bit and say that black people in general don't like to read and research. You get your info from the media, from white media, from their TV shows, from their radio, from their music, from their movies, and all that shit is advertisements to other white folks, but also it's a military strategy against you. Speaking of the homosexualization as part of the emasculation campaign against black masculinity, I want to play a clip here. And I actually wanted to do this show last week when this was, I guess, more fresh in people's minds. But I want to play a clip here. And I'm not even going to introduce the clip. I'm just going to play it, and then I'm going to discuss it after you hear it. Okay? Take a listen.
Chairman Grassley, Ranking Member Feinstein, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to testify on the Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights today. My name is Terry Crews. I am an actor, author, former athlete, advocate, and a survivor of a sexual assault. This past year, we have seen powerful men in Hollywood and elsewhere finally held accountable for sexual harassment and assault. We also saw the backlash survivors faced after coming forward. I wanted these survivors to know that I believed them, I supported them, and that this happened to me too. This encouraged me to come forward with my own experience and reflect on the cult of toxic masculinity that exists in our society. As a child, I watched my father violently abuse my mother, using his power and authority to dominate her. All I could think of was how to protect her. How if I get strong, I can protect her from this living nightmare. As I grew up, this thought transformed the type of man I became. I swore I would never be like my father, and yet I believe to my core that as a man, I was more valuable in this world than women. As a protector and symbol of strength, I was more worthy, that women were beneath me. I used images of women's body and pornography at my disposal, validating my need for control. I often cut women short of sharing personal details of their lives so they would seem less human, less real. As a man, I was taught my entire life that I must control the world. So I used power, influence, and control to dominate every situation, from the football field to the film set, even in my own home with my wife and children. Then, in 2016, while at a party with my wife, I was sexually assaulted by a successful Hollywood agent. The assault lasted only minutes, but what he was effectively telling me while he held my genitals in his hand was that he held the power, that he was in control. This is how toxic masculinity permeates culture. As I shared my story, I was told over and over that this was not abuse, that this was just a joke, that this was just horseplay. But I can say that one man's horseplay is another man's humiliation. And I chose to tell my story and share my experience to stand in solidarity with millions of other survivors in the world. That I know how hard it is to come forward. I know the shame associated with assault. It happened to me. I'm not a small or insecure man, but in that moment and in the time following, I've never felt more emasculated. As I watched women and colleagues in my industry come forward to share their Me Too stories, this shame washed over me again and again, and I knew I had to act. I am honored to use my platform and story to help create additional civil rights protections for survivors across the nation under the Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights. Which is why the Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights is a critical bill that must be enacted in all 50 states. This bill gives survivors the right to a fully government-subsidized rape kit to alleviate the financial burden of seeking justice. It gives survivors the right to receive information, including access to police reports, rape kit results, and access to sexual assault counselors. And by requiring that rape kits and forensic DNA evidence be retained for the duration of the statute of limitations, this bill gives survivors the right to have time to distance themselves from the immediate trauma before making the difficult decision to report the assault to law enforcement. This is why I sit here today with Amanda Nguyen and the RISE team. Every man, woman, and child deserves to be seen as equal under the law. The Sexual Assault Survivors Bill of Rights does just that by recognizing survivors' basic civil rights. While we can call attention to a culture of toxic masculinity and the need to disrupt power dynamics, this bill creates long-term change and gives power and control back to survivors. All survivors must be protected, and this bill must be enacted in all 50 states. Thank you.
Now, as you probably picked up, that was Ferry Cruz from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Big old buff black fella, Ferry Cruz. I know it's spelt with a T, but I'm pronouncing it with like an F. Because that shit he did was some fairy shit. Now, I played the whole entire clip there, and I played it for two reasons. Sexual assault is a real thing, and there needs to be protections for people who have been sexually assaulted. I have no problems with that. I support that. What I won't support, though, is this big black man, Ferry Cruz, had his sack fondled, and I just learned it today. It was twice his sack was fondled by that guy. And you know what Ferry Cruz has in that sack, by the way? The same thing those frogs have in their sacks, eggs. Because you're not going to tell me that you're going to let some man, some fucking white boy, essentially homosexualize you by grabbing you and you not showing strength as a black man and knocking that fucker out. Ladies, toxic masculinity? You want to thwart this so-called toxic masculinity? Well, that's what you have right there. That's the kind of man you want? A man who will let some Dutch boy put a finger in his hole? That's what you want. I read somewhere else where Cruz was talking about how his wife trained him. Listen to the wording. His wife trained him not to react. And I'm not talking in the moment. In the moment, I think she said something too, like, don't, whatever. But beforehand, she trained him. This is his word. Not to react. All because why? He's a black man and he's from Flint, Michigan, and he has maybe one chance in life to be viable and successful. So you'll let a dude hold your sack. You see the problem here? And there's other problems with this too, because now they got a black fella, a big old black buck, to become the face of the campaign against so-called toxic masculinity. Isn't that what they always do? Get some boot-licking Negro to do some shit like this? And let me say something else about Ferry Cruz here. Ferry Cruz has done some questionable shit in the past. I've seen him doing some stuff around some white boys and stuff from the Expendables cast and all that kind of shit. That's real questionable shit. And I'm not saying because he was wearing next to nothing, a dude should grab his sack, but be a man. And this is a man telling you that. Be a fucking man. Would you trust Terry Crews to protect you after this shit? Is that the kind of man you guys, you women want around you, either as your lover or as your grown children or something? This is what you want? And Terry Crews is sitting there all uncomfortable, like the butt plug he put in slipped out or some shit like that, just sitting there squirming like a punk. Now, here's the funny thing. That was a white guy who grabbed his sack. Remember what I said about the cast man? How docile and obedient and stuff these cast men, these Negroes are around white guys? Terry Crews hears me saying this, he might want to beat the shit out of me. You see how things come back? How terms always have an example, and Terry Crews is that example. Now, women, I want y'all to be honest in the comment section. Y'all don't want a man who would allow that to happen, would you? You don't want to raise a son who would allow that shit to happen, would you? Can you trust that person, that son, that lover, that husband, what have you, father? Can you trust them if they're acting like Terry Crews? Can you trust them to protect you? Can you trust them to provide for you with dignity and honor? And that's a very important statement right there. Because guys like him can provide for you taking a finger up the ass, but there's no dignity and honor in that. So this is why I really need you, ladies, to stop with the toxic masculinity in the black community. Let Whitey do whatever the fuck Whitey wants to do. Because, let me share this with you too. White women talking about toxic masculinity from white men, they're talking about that in terms of themselves and their relationship with their men. When that toxic masculinity is turned towards black men and women, they don't give a fuck about it. They're cool with that shit. Remember some couple years ago, and I mentioned this on a previous broadcast too in some capacity. Remember there was like a 14-year-old black girl, a bunch of them, bunch of black teenagers in Texas, I believe. I think it was McKinney, Texas or something. They were going to a pool. And on tape, we had to watch this white dude show his pussified aggression against this young black girl's body wearing a bathing suit. Remember that? Did you hear any white women speak out against that shit? Nah, because that's cool. That's black folk. That's black chicks. That's a black woman, a black girl, actually. You beat the shit out of a black man in the street, you shoot him, you kill him, that's cool. That's not toxic masculinity. They're cool with that shit. But here you are parroting this shit that they say. Why do you follow them? Why do you listen to them? When white fathers are teaching their white sons to be the way that we see them on these tapes and all this kind of shit like that, these women aren't talking about toxic masculinity. When these white women celebs adopt these black children, what's this white woman? Was that Negro Seal married to her? I can't even remember. They all kind of look alike. They all kind of seem alike to me. One of these white actresses adopted these black children, and the black boy is dressed like a woman, is dressed like a girl all the time. What the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? But that's the toxic masculinity that these white folks have, and their white women only are concerned where that so-called masculinity is so-called toxic to them. When they were using their aggression racially to burn down Black Wall Street and bomb people and burn children and all kind of stuff, nothing was said. When that aggression was used to execute a boy named Emmett Till off of a lie, which I'm pretty sure those white guys, if they cared, could tell the shit was a lie anyway. No one talked about toxic masculinity. No white woman talked about no toxic fucking masculinity then. They say that shit for you to pick it up. Just like how you run with the whole gay shit now. Black women are the leading people bleeding hearts talking about homosexuality and we gotta treat transgenders correct. I see that shit on the Breakfast Club. It's so pathetic. Watching guys who came from the streets like Envy and the other guy Charlemagne talking about, isn't that a beautiful person? Speaking of some boy dressed like a fucking woman. It's pathetic. So I want you guys to understand that I want men to listen to this. I want women to listen to this. I want you to pass this on to your children, etc. Don't be a cast man like Terry Crews, or Ferry Crews, I should say. Don't be a cast woman like a lot of our women are. Like a lot of our women are portrayed in media, the Olivia Popes of the world. Stop parroting these terminologies like toxic masculinity. Another one I could touch on too is patriarchy. Where? In the black community, where? We're both under the oppression. What power do black men have to wield over black women? When, as I mentioned, and Cooks wrote about this shit 60, 70, maybe even 80 years ago. That the white man has his queen, his white queen, and right under her, he has a black woman serving her as a maid and a black woman serving him as a mistress. So, I'm going to end it there. But I really would like to hear from women for a twofold reason. I want to hear your thoughts on this topic. But I also want to know that women are listening to the show. Because I get the impression it's mostly men who listen. And I do this show for both men and women. If it was just for men, I would name the show Black MGTOW. Black men going their own way. This show is about dropping information and insights and opinions for both black men and black women. Let me know that you black women are listening to the show. Black men, be more proactive. Be there. Stop doing whatever you're doing that creates the abandonment issue. And black women, don't help with the abandonment either. Don't be a cast woman who pushes your man out of the picture. Black men, stop being silly. Stop be a man and don't be a mannequin. You know the difference? A mannequin is something that you put it in whatever position you want to put it in. A man chooses what position he wants to be in. It's important, and it's particularly important for the next generations to come. We don't need no more of these bitchy males out here anymore who will kill you for, grazing their shoes. When I was growing up, I only know women to really be on some shoe shit like that. You have men out here more prissy about shoes than women are. That's a female trait, to use a Jay-Z line. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you for listening. Again, drop comments below if you're listening to this on YouTube, or if you're on Facebook or whatever social media platform. Also, you can listen to this show while you're on the go. We're on Apple Podcasts, we're iTunes, we're on any podcast player, any mobile device. You can find our podcast. We're one of the higher rated Black empowerment podcasts. So you can find us out there. Make sure to subscribe. Those numbers, when you subscribe, when you give a thumbs up on YouTube, that helps. That helps a lot in getting this message out there even more. Okay? So until next time, this has been the Bitter Medicine Podcast, and I'm your humble host, Koku. Oh, one more thing. Just a reminder, the book club is going on. You guys heard the last show where we did the book review with Carl Hezekiah. A lot of people like that show. If you haven't heard it, even if you didn't get to read the book while we were reading the book during the month of June, that's fine. You can still join the discussion because we reviewed the book for you in a podcast. Listen to the show. Drop any insights. Ask any questions you want to. Okay? Same goes for this month. For the month of July, we're reading How Europe Underdeveloped Africa by Walter Rodney. You can get the book today by going to our website, going to the book club page, and you could use the affiliate links there to buy either the Kindle or the paperback edition of the book. At the end of the month, once again, we're going to have a podcast show. Hopefully I can get the live working on YouTube, where people can listen in live as the show goes on. We haven't done that before. And I'm going to have it where people can call in, definitely, and ask their questions or give their insights on the book. We need to read people. We need to be a reading people, because that will help us become a thinking people. As I always say, reading is fundamental, and reading is particularly fundamental to your empowerment. Join us in the book club. Send us suggestions for books that we should probably read in the book club in the future. We'll add it to the list. Okay? So once again, this is Koku, host of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I thank you for listening. I will talk to you soon. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.